Hey everyone, welcome back to Yellow Jacket Garage. Thanks for being here. Glad you found my channel, and please hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. I really appreciate it. Okay, so today's video, what I want to talk about is the engine that's currently in the 62 Corvette. So let's go ahead and dive into this explanation. It's going to be more of an explanation than it is a learning. Okay, so when the owners purchased this car, I was there when they did so. The seller had indicated that the engine that's in the car was not the original. We've determined that it is in fact not the original engine, but he said that he thought it was a 350. And so there were some clues that I should have paid attention to that I didn't pay attention to at that point in time. A lot of it is because I hadn't really been doing this part of stuff for quite a while, and so it wasn't as fresh as it could have been. But anyway, there is this air cleaner on the front side right here. This is the oil fill. This is where you would, if you changed the oil, you would pour the oil back into, but this is a breather cap. That being a breather cap indicates, and should have indicated to me at that point in time, that this engine is probably not a 350 because it is probably a road draft engine, which the lion's share of the road draft engines were either 327 or 283. Now I'm going to show you here in a second something else that tells you that it's a road draft engine. Now the road draft engines have underneath the lifter valley, or the intake manifold, there's a canister that's in there that helps regulate the airflow that goes back out. Modern engines use the PCV, the positive crankcase ventilation, to get those crankcase pressures and gases out. They reburn typically or whatnot, but anyway, down the road in some other videos we'll go through that process a little bit further when we reach that. But I wanted to preface what I'm going to do in the future with kind of where I'm at now, and so this is where I'm at. The reason that they did the road draft was because the air would come in from the front from this filter here, go through, and then all that pressure that's created when the engine is running would exit through the road draft tube on the backside. It goes down to the bottom and it kind of exits out underneath the car. They changed it up, a little bit of emission stuff and a little bit of trying to get them to run better and all that stuff to the PCV. And so part of the reason why, or the reason why the crankcase needs to be ventilated though, is because when the car's running, it'll build up heat and it'll build up pressure. And when you build up that pressure inside the engine, if it doesn't have a place for that pressure to go, it'll start forcing oil out through the gaskets and seals, or even go so far as to rupture gaskets and seals, and so then you just have a massive oil leak that's not really a good thing. So that's kind of why they've gone through the iterations that they have. When we redo this, that canister that's in the lifter valley is going to stay there, but the likelihood is we'll probably do the block-off plate because we're going to actually run a PVC that's going to go into the carburetor and out that way, and then we'll have a breathers in the valve covers at that point in time. That's why these valve covers do not have breathers in them, because that's the breathers on those sides. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a peek at that. And okay, let me get in here and show you what I'm talking about. Now this tube, that's, reach my hand in here, this tube right here, this black tube that runs down the back side here, that's the road draft tube. It bolts into the back of the block. Now this one appears like it is actually, let me get around the side of it so you can maybe see it, that right here it's actually split. And so this is allowing oil vapors and everything else to exit right here, which is causing probably a lot of the intrusion into the cabin when the car is running down the road. You could smell the, like, not exhaust, but that kind of oily, vapory kind of a deal, and it was not pleasant for the drivers. And so this is kind of part of the whole process. So hopefully, let me see if I can get a better view of that and get my finger in there. So this right here there is a crack, and so hard telling. Somebody probably was moving that around and bent the tube and stuff when they were doing some work underneath, and so that is a problem. But what we're going to do, since we don't need this, we're going to get the block off plate and we'll block that off, and then we'll use just the vents in the valve cover. One of them is going to run into the back of the carburetor like they should, and then from the original road draft, that's why this is here, is because that's the oil. And as you can see, there's the baffles in there with the filter and everything else. That's what that's all about. It's there for that reason. And on it goes. So, okay, the second part of this video, we're going to talk about the actual crank pulley or the harmonic balancer on this engine. And the earlier engines like these, a lot of them, they were a pressed-on harmonic balancer instead of what we see today. There's the balancer is kind of compression fit, slides on, then you've got the bolt that runs into the crank that pulls it down tight. There is the keyway in there that holds it where it's supposed to be positioned and all that good stuff. This one has that, the current stuff has that, but this one, being a press-on, does not have that crank bolt. And so I'm getting ready to pull the distributor, and so in order to pull the distributor, I wanted to rotate the engine over so that I could get the number one cylinder, which is the front cylinder on the driver's side. I wanted to get that onto top dead center on the compression stroke. And so what that'll do is it'll get the line that's on the harmonic balancer to line up with the timing mark on that tab. And so basically what that does is that puts our reference point for everything in the valve train to be at 0. And so when the distributor comes out and the new one goes in, then that's going to be lined up so that it's pointing at the right wire for the spark plug to know whichever one that one is. I think it's this one here is where that one's pointed. But anyway, we'll index it to point it so that it's number one, top dead center, compression stroke, which is the firing point. And so then the spark plug wire is lined up with where it's supposed to be. And very important, because if it's either lined up with the wrong spark plug, or if it's lined up 180 degrees out, the engine won't run, or it'll run really, really poorly. And so that's why we do that before we pull the distributor, so that we can make sure that we're ready to go with the new one going in and all that good stuff, because we're going to replace the intake manifold. We'll be ready for that, but I wanted to show you this. I wanted to talk about that a little bit so that if you're not familiar with these older engines, that'll help you understand kind of how they're set up. The reason why I'm talking about it is because I went to put a bolt on the crank bolt, because remember I talked about this being a 350. A 350 should have had a bolt on the crank. It's a 327, so it does not, because it's a press-on harmonic balancer. So my thought was that somebody had broken the bolt off and then didn't fix it. I just cataloged wrong. And so, but I went off of the information that I had, and what we had assumed was the proper information. So anyway, enough of that. Let me show you that, and then I'll get out of your hair for another couple of weeks maybe. But let me jump down there and we'll show you what that looks like. All right, now here's the part that I was complaining about, was with the harmonic balancer, or with the crankshaft bolt. Get this in here where you can get to it. In the end of the crank right here, on more current small block Chevys, there is a bolt that goes into the end of the crankshaft, and that holds the harmonic balancer on. Now with a harmonic balancer, there is a keyway and everything else that holds it in position, so it keeps it where it's supposed to be. And because I was under the assumption, as we were told, that this was a 350, I went to put a socket on there and turn the engine over so I can get up to top dead center. There was no bolt. And so that prompted my whole dive into, why is there not a bolt in there? And then discovering that, hey, well, it's not a 350 like we thought, it's a 327. And it's an early 327 with a pressed-on harmonic balancer, so it doesn't have a bolt right there. Hopefully that wasn't too long and boring, but a little bit of explanation on a couple of parts of what we're doing, what's going on here. And so hopefully when I actually do the next video and you see all this stuff torn apart, you'll understand what I did and kind of how I got where I got. I got to get out of here, let you guys get back to doing whatever you're doing. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for watching Yellow Jacket Garage, and as always, we'll see you on down the road.